Hey guys, welcome back to Scottsdale Living. Today we're going to continue our journey down the path of chatting with all the candidates for the Scottsdale City Council. Today we have Adam Kwasman with us. Adam is a native of Arizona.
Yep.
Husband, father, lawyer, business owner, been in the legislature, politician. I mean, you got a lot going on, man. How are you keeping that all together?
Not a career politician. I've entered and exited public life, but more. Let's take on more projects. Let's do more.
Love it. Yeah, you have great energy for sure. Great energy.
4 kids, you figure at some point I'll sleep.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a while though, right? I love it. So what motivated you to run for city council? Because you came from the legislature, the state legislature, right? So do you see that like a step backwards or a step forwards, or just it is what it is?
It is what it is. You know, it's been a decade since I served in the state house. Okay. So in the meantime, got married, had 4 children, completed my law degree, started a law firm, working with a wonderful gentleman in Phoenix, and then went on. I sold that firm to him, and then I started my own practice here in Scottsdale.
Cool. Yeah,
we've been here for about just under 10 years, like a tick under 10 years. My wife and I wanted to raise our family here in Scottsdale.
I love it. Why not?
It's the best place to live, work, and raise a family.
I totally agree with you. Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at Scottsdale today, there's obviously some issues out there. There's this old school conservative folks that really don't want anything to change, right? And then there's some new development and all kinds of things going on in the city. What do you kind of see of some of the biggest obstacles that are in the place right now for the upcoming city council?
Left, right, and center, Scottsdale is the premier destination of the New West.
Yeah.
When I talk about the New West, I mean, you're thinking of Denver, you're thinking of Vegas, you're thinking of the Valley, you're thinking, this really is that economic and family-focused driver that folks are moving from across the United States. Representing and seeing Scottsdale change over the last 10 years, I wanted to dive in and really ensure that the next 10 years are on that and continue on that upward trajectory.
Sure.
I love Scottsdale. I love raising my family here. There's things that I think we could do better. When I see, my background is in economics. Before it was in law, I hold a master's in economics, taught by 2 Nobel laureates, which is incredible.
Killer, that's great.
Yeah, I'm very blessed.
You went to Tulane, right?
I went to Tulane for undergraduate, and then George Mason University for my master's degree. Okay. So I worked on and off Capitol Hill. Did that time over there. But when I see budgets, when I was in the legislature, I served as the vice chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, and I served on Appropriations and Commerce. So money in, money out,
absolutely. And spreadsheet.
That's right. And so here we have override after override.
Yeah.
I'm looking at where budgets are being spent, and in a world where everybody hates each other in DC.
Yeah.
They're just fighting. They can't even decide who the heck the Speaker of the House should be.
Right? I know, it's ridiculous.
Both parties have failed in that way.
Yeah.
The legislature, you have complete gridlock with very narrow majorities. Scottsdale and our municipalities should be places where I really buy into the nonpartisanship, where people could come together and just solve problems.
Which I absolutely love for the city level. I think it's fantastic.
And it's so close to the people. I'll give you a perfect example of just literally today.
Sure.
I live in McCormick Ranch. So getting down to the studio, you pass Indian Bend and Hayden.
Yeah, little construction going on there right now.
During spring training at the heaviest month of the year when it comes to our visitors.
Yeah.
Is that the type of... Now, I know that exact time frame is not in front of the council itself, but it's that type of leadership and making sure that our planning for our municipalities and our communities are done correctly.
Totally.
And things can change very quickly. You don't have to be the Titanic that you're stuck hitting the iceberg.
Sure.
We can move swiftly like a clipper ship. And that's what I would like to do. See where we could reform things and make our lives better when it comes to crime, making sure our police officers have not only the resources, but also the support necessary to protect our families.
Well, so crime's kind of coming home lately in Scottsdale, because I think if I remember this correctly, the Scottsdale police have been fired on 4 times in the last 6 months or so.
There are those, this is where I staunchly differ from certain incumbents that are running again. They're trying to tell us that we don't have a crime issue in Scottsdale.
Sure.
And families are just, the reason why I got into this race is because of, people have different apps on their phones and saying, hey, there was a break-in here, a break-in there.
Yeah. Tourist burglary or tourist, whatever that was.
evening time burglaries. When dads are scared to take their families to dinner because they're scared that their houses are going to be broken into.
Yeah.
We could do better. And I'm not, and this is nowhere close to an indictment on the police force.
Sure.
The police force have been outstanding.
Right.
Let's just continue to make sure that they have the support that they need
and tools and everything.
Unequivocally. And the tools in the belt to be able to prosecute these criminals. When you have these illegal gangs that are coming in, I mean, let's solve the problem here. I don't want Scottsdale to turn into Tempe.
Yeah.
I want to keep Scottsdale that incredible place to raise a family and have that character that we know and love.
Yeah, no, 100% with you. So let's switch topics a little bit. So the Scottsdale City Council as a whole hasn't approved a ton of projects in the last year or 2 years, but they have approved some, and there's been a lot of controversy on that. What is your take on development in the city? And I mean, you hear all different sides of it, but I mean, obviously there needs to be some type of continued development, but what does it look like for you?
Yeah, no, I believe in capitalism.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But here's the issue. I live in a family home in McCormick Ranch. I'm running as a family man and for Scottsdale families. And when the view of Camelback Mountain starts getting towered over by a new apartment complex every 10 minutes, you start saying, it's losing its charm and its character.
Sure.
I don't want this to become Fresno,
totally.
And it matters. So again, what development matters? It's do we want another apartment block, or do we want the type of, I have no problem with the Ritz-Carlton coming in. That's a development project. I think it's going to add tremendous amount of jobs, dollars,
absolutely.
Fun, bring tourism in,
the whole deal,
right? I'm all in. But when you bring in an apartment complex that's for middle to low income families, it's going to change the tax base. It's going to change the traffic patterns. It's going to change everything in terms of the character of the city. Scottsdale has a cachet. It's got a thing. It's got a je ne sais quoi to it.
Sure.
I'm for preserving that. So I think it's about being smart about it. I think it's about being reasonable and focusing. If you say, is this better for families or not? Let's make sure it's always better for families.
Sure. Well, so funny topic there to spin into, but there's a big touch on affordable housing, right? Scottsdale does not have affordable housing. It's a big challenge. But will Scottsdale ever have affordable housing? I mean, how do you see that?
So this is where I'm taking off my lawyer hat and putting on my economist hat.
Sure.
Okay. And I have both hands. You can be a two-handed economist. But,
it's a magic act. I love it.
But I'm a family man. I have 4 kids.
Right.
I'm not moving into an apartment complex.
Yeah.
And they could build 1,000 new units. It's not going to change the price of the home that I need to move into to be able to serve my family in the best of their abilities. The long term of Scottsdale in the long run has to be the focus. And in the long run, it's not being a rubber stamp for development for every apartment complex that wants to come by.
Sure.
It needs to be focused on families.
Yeah.
Families mean long-term community and continuity. Long-term community and continuity mean a culture and a tax base. A long-term culture and a tax base means a reputation. And that's what we're looking at.
Sure. Yeah, and I love that. So, I mean, I totally get it. One thing that's been really interesting about the last year and a half watching is we're building a huge chip manufacturing plant right off the 303 and the 17. And I think there's actually going to be another one, if I understand that correctly. But that impacts Scottsdale directly because a lot of those businesses and the ancillary, spinoffs come to Scottsdale. So how's that growth going to be managed? Because they're going to need space, they're going to need area. And you've got the 101 up at Scottsdale Road, Pima, a lot of space there. I mean, what's going to go down there,
and again, you have Axon. You want to make sure that I believe in corporate headquarters.
Yeah, totally. It's great.
But the problem is when they want to build 2,000 apartment complexes, or apartment units right next to it, how's that going to affect the traffic patterns? Yeah. So again, long-term growth, long-term thought processes. When I was in the legislature on appropriations, I worked with making sure the roads are, that we're ahead of the game, right? But when you have any type of narrowing, when you want to make sure that if people want to clog movement for some reason because they want to create islands of population, now you're moving away from the idea that we are a transit city. This is not a transit of our homes, but I mean, when we're moving from place that we commute to work. Yeah. We want to make sure our commute is smooth, it's short, because that puts more precious time at home with our families. Yeah,
absolutely, without a doubt. We're going to jump topics a little bit because it's always fun to throw curveballs. But so homelessness is becoming an issue in the Valley, right? And it's creeping into Scottsdale a little bit, and it is what it is. But I mean, currently, I think we address it by putting people actually up in hotels, right? Is that kind of the process?
The Scottsdale City Council voted to actually pay for hotel units for homeless. as well as the plan was for permanent units for homeless. And it's just an exorbitant cost per unit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not reasonable. We need a treatment first approach to those who are suffering from homelessness. I'm extremely sympathetic for those, especially who need the treatment and care that they need. We want to work together. It's one of the reasons why I've been endorsed by Matt Gress. He's been a super legislator from the Valley and in Scottsdale, making sure that we have a treatment first approach for those who are homeless, as well as get those who can be on the street, can be off the streets and into a job. Get people transitioned, whether they need an ID, any type of government services that they can have. However, we need to have a mind frame that's more, in my opinion, like that of Florida, where you just do not have a right to live as a homeless person in the public square. I want any solution when it comes to homelessness to have two things in mind in the forefront: public safety and property owners. Those have to be taken care of first. I'm sorry, we need to take care of our citizens first. And unfortunately, I don't think Phoenix has dealt with the homelessness crisis the way they should. We are suffering the effects because, of course, they're being kicked out of the zone in downtown Phoenix. Why wouldn't they come to Scottsdale if Scottsdale is going to be a magnet? I don't want Scottsdale to be a magnet. I want Scottsdale to be for families.
Yeah, no, I absolutely get it. Another one, it kind of hits families for sure. And in McCormick Ranch, you probably experience it, but the short-term rental situation it's a hot topic, and it has been for a while in Scottsdale and throughout. And I know that the state has a lot of control over that. And I know that the city's done a few things to help that. But what's your take on it as far as where's that going to head to, and where would you like to see it head to?
So I think people they want very reasonable answers for short-term rentals. And that is, if somebody's being a nuisance, there has to be consequences for that. Right? And that means working with the short-term rental companies and making sure that there's somebody there's a phone number that's not some 800 number that's in Bombay.
So some accountability,
phone, right? Accountability. Making sure that bad actors are removed from their ability to be short-term rental owners anymore. Want to make sure that you don't have outward sound nuisance, garbage nuisance, and I think that making sure that it's not all in one area that destroys property values for
which it kind of is right now, right? I mean, Old Town seems to be pretty overrun with short-term rentals for sure,
and the problems that come with it, crime and with nuisance. So we need to make sure that we are that we're doing everything we can to, like you said, accountability first.
Sure. So one thing is some people really feel strongly about. So Scottsdale now elects the city council at large. Have you ever thought about or considered having different zones of the city? Or I'm not sure the terminology,
wards. You'd say wards.
So like a ward.
So Tucson had that, right?
Okay.
And I come from Tucson, and I've seen how cities fail. And one of the things that I think that Scottsdale's and city like Scottsdale is small enough to have at large districts that I want to make sure as a voter that my voice it counts for impacting the entirety of the city. I don't want the culture of the city to be dependent upon 15 people in some off-year election, because that's what you get. I believe in local government. I believe in government close to the people, but I am more than capable of representing all the way from DC Ranch down to Old Town Scottsdale.
No, I totally get it. Yeah, it's just been brought up quite a few times, so it's kind of interesting to get people's takes on it. Talk to me a little bit about, because this has been a hot topic for a little bit now, is campaign financing. So campaign financing from the national level is insane, out of control, right? And it even seems like it's kind of trickling down a little bit to the local level. What's your take on how that should be managed and controlled?
So I think this is, again, let's just be reasonable. It is crazy to me that you would have somebody who is voting on, let's say, a development, can take a gigantic check, thousands and thousands of dollars, by the developer, not have to disclose it for years, long after they've voted on the issue. It could be kept secret, and saying that it's transparent because 3 years later I've disclosed it because I'm running for re-election.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense, and we need to get rid of that process entirely. I'm working with Matt Gress again on a bill that passed in the legislature by people also who are supporting me John Kavanaugh and Alexander Culloden
Mm-hmm.
and Joseph Chapwick, they're all supporting this idea of making sure that city council candidates report their campaign donations
Sure.
timely and quarterly, like everybody else. Like you would have it at the federal level,
Right.
where you have a quarterly disclosure.
Sure.
I'm for more than that. I'm for going even farther. I think 72 hours is more than enough
Mm-hmm.
time to disclose if there's business in front of the council and there's an interest of that. I don't want to stop people. People have a right to donate to their candidates they want. But sunlight is a great disinfectant, and let people know where people are coming from and who's getting paid by whom.
Sure.
Just to make sure there's no impropriety. It's not hard to have these things. These are not left issues or right issues.
Mm-hmm.
These are Scottsdale issues.
Sure. Checks and balance kind of thing
right.
going on.
That's right.
So walk me through, like, let's say when you get elected,
Mm-hmm.
what's going to be your first 180 days, your first 6 months? I mean, what are you looking to accomplish in that time period?
Yeah, I think the transparency is a big one that we just
Mm-hmm.
talked about. I want to make sure that I want to really dive into that budget.
Sure.
I want to see where every dime is being spent
Mm-hmm.
and turn it over and over again and
Right.
see, they're asking for tax increases. They're asking for, there are individuals, there are groups here that are seeking, they're saying it's not a tax increase when
Sure.
a tax is expiring.
To
Not actually let it expire. They're
Right.
saying, no, it's a tax reduction.
Right.
No, the tax goes to zero. That's not the reduction should be to zero.
Sure.
And if you want to spend any dime of the taxpayers' money, I want to know where it's being spent.
Yeah.
So I'm a big budget guy. I care about it. I want to go right to the police and say whatever resources that you
Sure.
need to make sure that we have recruitment at 100%. I want to make sure that they have the tools 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want Scottsdale police officers to afford to be able to live in Scottsdale. I
Sure.
think it's important that they live here. They're part of our community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Police and fire need to be fully funded,
Mm-hmm.
100%. And then also, I think we need to have a new approach with homelessness. That's
Mm-hmm.
a big issue for me.
Sure.
And to make sure that we don't have, it is not a right to street peddle.
Yeah.
I do not like seeing children on the street.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. This is when you go to Lincoln and Lincoln and Scottsdale Road,
Mm-hmm.
there are families on the street peddling and with children there. And I think that's child abuse.
Sure.
I really do. We need to make sure that we tackle this homelessness crisis as soon as possible. It's the most humane thing to do for everybody.
Right. Yeah. So another thing that's kind of interesting is Scottsdale surrounded by the reservation
Mm-hmm.
and Phoenix on one side.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see the collaboration there? Because especially Scottsdale Road's a really interesting study, right? Because a lot of people complain about development and blocking the views and everything else, but that's actually Phoenix doing a ton of that, So, I mean, and on the reservation, there's unbelievable amount of construction going on and they're building amazing stuff. They do a great job, right? So what's that collaboration with the city look like and what should it look like?
So I think that's one of the main reasons to elect me is that the League of Cities and Towns matters. The League of Cities and Towns is the organization that is the conduit and go-between the municipalities, as well as the relationship between the municipalities and the state legislature. I've dealt with them on numerous occasions on the other side. I'll give you an example. My first bill ever signed by the governor had to do with a water project and effluents, which is recycled water, making sure that we had a long-term water solution in southern Arizona, in Pima County, in northwest Pima County.
Mm-hmm.
I have a proven record of working with municipalities from the state side. I want to be able to bring that knowledge and experience, start from day one. I won't have to learn on the job to have that relationship with the city of Phoenix, whom I know, and the legislature leaders who I know.
Sure.
Warren Peterson and I shared, who's now the Senate president.
Mm-hmm.
He and I shared an office suite when we were freshmen together. I think that really does matter.
The relationships do matter, without a doubt, right?
Relationships matter, and the idea of I kind of have the best of all worlds because I have all the experience of having served before, but I'm not a career politician. I've also signed the front of paychecks, hired people, fired people, understand what that private sector is, where economic growth really comes from, knows that you don't have to stay in government. Government doesn't define you. You asked earlier about, is this a step down for me? I don't believe in 1 minute that the legislature or the city council, that there's a step up or down.
Sure.
How best to serve your community is what matters.
Yeah. So let's spin it a little bit. So we have a couple unbelievable events that happen in Scottsdale, right? So, Barrett Jackson's car auction's fantastic. Spring training, the Arabian horse show, all that. This year was a little bit of a black eye, right? So, I mean, the Waste Management Open, little crazy. So, I mean, obviously the city doesn't really have a ton of control over that necessarily, but what was your take on that? And I mean, how should we address that? Because it's such a signature event, but it was a little nuts this year.
And you could see the slide going over the last decade. Every year is getting a little wilder and a little wilder. Listen, I'm an Orthodox Jew. Okay, we keep this idea of sneus, this idea of how not only how you dress, but how you hold yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that bringing a little bit of that culture into the community matters.
Sure.
And just because the city council is not there, they're not going to be able to say, you're not going to be finger wagging toward visitors. We want to have visitors as much as possible, but culture matters. How we represent the city matters. The goal is that, yes, we need to turn the tide. We still want to have a blast. I mean, the waste management is a blast. I mean, friends come from across the country.
Yeah, they love it for sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
And it brings a lot of tax dollars into the community, right? From the restaurants all the way down the line, right?
Sure.
I'm all for it. But I think it starts with the council. How do we hold ourselves?
Yeah.
Are we involved? Are we engaged in the everyday so that you change the culture of the council, you change the culture of the city, and you say, we're going to have a blast. The goal is to be Charleston, not New Orleans.
Yeah.
And
there you go.
That's the goal. You can have just as much fun in Charleston, just as, very similar cities in terms of how they look. They're beautiful, but fundamentally different when you think of Bourbon Street versus downtown Charleston.
Yeah, 100%. That's hilarious. Yeah, so talk a little bit about, this is always an interesting question I'd like to ask. Okay, so Scottsdale is amazing. I mean, it's a great place to be. It's a great place to live. I mean, I love the amount of reserved land we have and all of that stuff. So in your opinion, what has the city council done right? I mean, what's been going good for the last few years?
I mean, there's a reason why I got here 10 years ago. I mean,
Totally.
Well, my wife and I represented Northwest Pima County and Western Pinal in the legislature.
Sure.
My wife and I got married right after, right in 2015. So I was in the state house when we got engaged and then we got married. We were talking to each other. She's from Georgia. I'm from Tucson. Where do we want to raise a family?
Sure.
And we decided Scottsdale for a reason.
Yeah.
The schools are great. The parks are wonderful. The streets were safe at that time, right? The demographics have a wonderful mix of elderly and young families coming in, which I think is really beautiful for a community.
Sure.
We're a family. It's cohesive. That cohesion is different from Phoenix.
Yep.
Phoenix is much more of course, your metropolis. And then you have Tempe, which is very, very young, very transient. I like the stability. My synagogue's on 65th and Shea. I like knowing to go to the kosher restaurants. I like knowing the neighbors. That's how Americana should be. It's the best part of civil society.
Right.
It's home.
Yeah.
You hit it. That's what needs to be preserved.
Yeah.
And it can get away. It can naturally get away from us.
Sure.
Especially with COVID. After COVID, when shutdowns and lockdowns, we wanted to make sure that we have an opportunity now to really set the tone for the future.
Sure.
Good, solid, reasonable leadership is where we go.
Absolutely. Well, super appreciate you being here with us.
Thank
Absolutely
you so
fantastic.
much.
Give us all your stuff. How do we get a hold of you? How do we find you?
Yeah.
How do we reach out to you?
So my last name is spelled Kwasman, AdamKwasman.com, AdamKwasman.
Love it.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Insta.
You
we're
got it
rocking
covered.
and rolling. Please get in touch with us if you want to volunteer.
Sure.
Send us a note. Tell us what matters to you, because I'm not here to take a leadership position. I'm here to serve as a leader. That's the importance. The service really counts to me. You're in charge. I'm asking you for a job.
Totally.
That's how I see myself running right now.
I love it. I appreciate you being here. Thanks very much.
I appreciate
Adam Kwasman running for city council here in Scottsdale. Thank you.